Everybody, welcome to this council briefing, Wednesday the 7th of May 2025. We have apologies from Mayor Jepson and Councillor Lambeth and an apology for lateness from Councillor Naya. Anyone else come in? Come here.
Councillor Panya is online.
And Councillor Panya is online. All right. Okay. First up, we are going to have our Transportation and Emergency Works update for May 2025. So welcome to the floor, gentlemen. And what I might get you to do is, as there are so many in the contingent, just come up and if we could get everyone to introduce themselves and tell us what your role is, that would be great. Thank you.
John's leading the way. Did you say something? Oh.
Yes. Okay. Good morning, Deputy Mayor and council members. So just on my support team today, as we all know, Chris, you've met Chris before. Welcome, John. John is our area manager for North, supporting you today. And we've got Jack Steed here that's looking after all the slip repairs. So if there's any questions, Jack, happy to answer. And we've also got in the back there, William is our unsealed manager for unsealed roads. So if there's any questions, you can support. But I think the rest of the team, you all know Blair as well and Kurt. So we'll get cracking. Right, so this is for reporting to the end of March, and then we'll give interim updates as we go through the presentation. Right, starting off with slide number 1, executive summary, ending 31st of March. The reseal program kicked off on the 10th of March. At the end of March, we had completed 53% of the 200,000 square meters of reseal. This includes approximately 1.2 million's worth of reseals in the greater Doggerville area. As of today, we're close on to 90% complete. Moya Street rehab, as you all know, progressed well during March, and besides the line marking is basically complete now. On the seal extension front, we're happy to report that Settlement Road, Devitt Road and Black Swamp Road has been completed. Kames Road obviously will be project managed at this stage by KDC. Unsealed roads, we carried out 37.5 kilometers of shape correction. We filled 260 holes and 1,860 cubes of metal was imported for pavement strengthening across the unsealed network. Slips, to date, as of the end of March, 12 slips have been repaired. Currently, we're in the process of repairing another 10 slips across the network, and we're making some good progress there as well. On the drainage works, ongoing, every month clearing out culvert ends, we're reinstating water tables, as well as culvert renewals. Have a flushing program commencing this month as well. Victoria Street rehab, which was brought forward from next financial year into this year, we do have a preliminary design completed, but due to the nature of the site, and the rainy, wet season, to mitigate those risks, we've decided to postpone that work just to after the winter. Right, slide 2, health and safety. Happy to report no major health and safety incidents during the month. We had one near miss, where a subcontractor reversed and clipped one of our youths on site. That driver was drug and alcohol tested and the disciplinary procedure was followed with the subcontractor. Nothing else to report. We on every Monday morning, we continue with the hot talks including our SBCs that are done during the month and our critical risk observations that we all need to do. Right, customer feedback, slide number 3. We received 107 requests for services during the month of March, and mostly relate still to the unsealed network. We did receive a good number of positive feedback from customers during March, as in the slide, you can see some snippets there, which is positive. And we managed to respond to all RFSs in time during the month of March. Just to report a heads up, this month we've seen a dramatic increase in RFSs, but they more relate to the tropical storm Tan, which passed through and followed by a lot more rain. So you will see an increase for April. Right, on the sealed maintenance, as I said earlier, this reseal program kicked off on the 10th of March, and as of today, we close on to 90%. We've got some sealing planned today and early next week, and we'll be finishing off with that. Key challenges across the network. Waterproofing of the network is still a real issue with the backlog over the last couple of years. But we are busy preparing and prioritizing a reseal program for next financial year, and we're going to get stuck into the pre-seals this financial year a lot earlier, actually before the end of this financial year, which is going to be putting us in a good position for next financial year. Right, unsealed maintenance activities. During March, we focused on shape corrections and managed to complete 37.5 kilometers of reshape corrections. 1,860 kilos of level strengthening was ordered across the network, and as mentioned, 268 potholes were filled, and we received good customer feedback from people actually living along the unsealed network, which was positive. We also have a program agreed with KDC for April, May and June. We still do have challenges going forward with the unsealed road. There is obviously a limited budget to serve a 1,126 kilometer network. It is challenging. We're always trying to stretch that budget, and a lot of times we have to do the minimal amount of repairs in places because of the budget. Drainage activities for the month of March. We received 7 RFSs related to drainage, and we continue to focus on reinstating water tables as well as installing new culverts. We've also started a flushing program. The list of sites that continued to on drainage was Avoca Road, Avoca South, Driver Road, Tangawahini Road, Settlement Road, Walker Terrace, Forestry Road, Devich Road, Bagnall Road, Paradise Road, Pukahuia, Omana Road, Roberts West, and Black Swamp Road. Rather, other maintenance activities, this more relate to the seal extensions and slips. So as we all know, on the 24th of October, we were requested to come up with cost-effective remedial options to repair slips left over from Cyclone Gabriel. End of March, we've managed to repair, actually up to now, 12 slips. Another 10 slips are in progress of being completed by the end of June. A number of the complex slips are being delivered through GETS and KDC. Some of these slips have been subject to complex design and landowner consent issues as well. The seal extensions, as mentioned earlier, Settlement Road, Devich and Black Swamp seal extensions have been completed. On the rehab front, Whakapira and Moy Street have basically been completed now. Victoria Street rehab will be delivered straight after the winter rain season, obviously due to the nature of that site. And there's also some water critical assets there that need replacing. Just on our Forward Works program, Nothing major to point out, but we're basically on target to achieve everything that we've planned to do so far. So I won't go into too much detail there, but if there's any questions, please ask. And then just moving on to finance and commercial. As of the end of March, our expenditure sitting at 12.3 million approximately. And with this month, an estimated total expenditure to date of 15.2 out of the $18 million budget. So we're on track to achieve the expenditure across the network. And that basically concludes the presentation for March, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jon. Councillor Nair, you've got a question?
Yes, acting chair. Yeah, I'm about to reach, but I just have a couple of questions, Leon. One, obviously, the reporting what we and the presentation what we get is very feel good factor. But the real, I want to see the real story, the struggles. I was at Plunkett Street yesterday, called by constituents to show me the resealing, and all of them said was unnecessary, and why it was done, and they were told that it is scheduled, so that you have to do it. So things like that. So are we doing the stuff where we just get the stuff and get paid, or are we? I would really like to know the work which we are struggling. I got another constituent telling me from Pahi that what has happened is 6 years. That slip at Pahi near Pahi Bridge. I'd like to know what's stopping it. And he said, what are you doing here? It's 6 years and it has still not been looked at. So these kind of questions, if you can help me answer or even give me some feeling, so I actually start feeling good.
Councillor Nair, could you just a little bit more clearly articulate what your questions are, please?
My questions are two. So one is obviously the reporting and presentation. I want to know what is holding, like for example, Victoria Street. We get it all the time. That is in planning, and it is being put
Sorry,
forward.
Councillor Nair, we're just having trouble hearing and understanding you. What
Okay,
is
you
your
take the next question.
What is your? Don't make a statement or express your opinion. Just ask the question that you want to ask. Ask your first question, and then pause and let the staff answer, and then you can ask your second question. Thank you.
Okay, can I suggest something? Then you take the other person's questions, and I'll come back personally inside in 2 minutes.
You want to send an email or?
No, I will be seeing you in 2 minutes. Let me park my car. Thank you.
Go through it again.
Okay, are there any other elected members? Yes, Councillor Williams, thank you.
Thank you. I did present some questions, so I don't know if you'd seen them.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just really would like to have an update on the Mangarai road slip, as I didn't see it in the report. And then I had another question. Well, we can talk about that then. I'll ask my next. So thank you.
I'll go to the chair on the Mangarai road slip's not in Downer's report because it's not under Downer's maintenance contract. That's been tendered out separately. So we concluded the undertaking the tendering on that. We have a preferred supplier. We told them off recommending to award it because still struggling to finalise the landowner agreement because the current design is approaching onto Mangarai property. The landowner's been good to deal with, but very, very cautious and very slow. Just had an internal meeting earlier this week. There is an option to proceed without encroaching on that land. So we'll look to get a recommendation to award that contract. That'll mean putting the road back slightly towards the slip, which reduces the factor of safety, but it does allow us to proceed parallel with that before the contractor gets on site. I'll see if I can complete that landowner agreement to otherwise we'll go with the option. With regard to the power pole, I did get a firm price to relocate the one that's currently in the middle of the road. I thought the price was exorbitant. There's another 2 poles that have to be moved as well. So I think we're back to the to get a more effective. We will figure them out once, there will be some saving.
Yeah.
To do 3 let's slow it down. So they'll give me a cost estimate. And they'll give me a further price next week, so. But that's related to the board contract. So it doesn't affect. It is something else.
Do you see that this slip being remedied by the end of the year? Like, what kind of timeline are you?
Yeah.
Well, we're certainly be on, we'll be on site with another month. We get earthworks and start doing some pavement, whether we finish the pavement and we just see that and make a call later. Is that we're independent? We'll certainly get a lot of work done.
Yes, but
That would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, if I may,
Go ahead.
Deputy, I think that the understanding we were given earlier on was that it would be done by the end of the year. So that's certainly been an expectation on our part and for many of the residents. I have another question, if I may.
Go.
I just have one more,
I got one.
so I'll just.
Jump.
Go ahead, councillor Williams.
And then I sent through another question about the Lower Tara Road pothole.
So it's actually been filled up now, as of yesterday. It's a temporary repair, but then we're going back to do a proper mill and fill patch there later on this month. But it has been filled.
I drove past it this morning and it
Is it
didn't
still not?
seem filled. No, that's why I'm asking. There's some green spray marks around it for where you're going to cut, but it's still filled with water and people are driving around that.
Right, but it has been scheduled for the permanent repair later on this month, yeah.
So definitely this month.
Yes.
That'd be fantastic because it's
Sure.
been a few months.
Yeah.
To do the temporary repair.
Thank you.
Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. Dion, 268 potholes repaired. I know I've asked this thing before. How many of those would be temporary repairs, i.e. just filled, rather than what was always prescribed, to go back to your first meeting with us, squared out so that they don't disrepair again?
I just to answer your question, ideally, we want to obviously, we are constrained to budget, but to do a lot more reshaping, rip and remake, to get those drainage corrections done. So we're doing it where we can. Some of them, obviously, we're carrying out actually on Franklin Road now, a lot of actual pothole repairs manually, with good lime, good quality material, stabilized with lime. But those are, if we get a severe rain event, they will pop out.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a terrible scenario to think about specific potholes, but there is that little patch down Molesworth Drive just below Greenview, not Greenview Drive, but where Thelma Road is, it comes out, and just below there, that regularly has come up with quite big potholes and right in the line that you would drive safely. So I know that you filled one last week probably with that, but is there a basic problem with that sort of 50-metre stretch of road below the intersection?
We'll have to have a look and get back to you.
Yeah, because it keeps happening.
Yeah.
And I have one more query. There was one that was on there because of a bad repair that was done sometime previous. That Quail Way was on a schedule for remediation. Is that still in there or has it been taken out?
Section of that, sorry?
Quail Way.
Quail Way.
Quail Way, I'll answer that one for you. So Quail Way was on the program to be rehabilitated this year. There was no design for it done the year before, so I had a quick look at it and think that it actually could repair that with a heavy maintenance strategy rather than a renewal strategy, which is quite a bit I guess, less expensive, I guess, than the renewal. So it is on the next year's Forward Works program. So from June, basically from July onwards, we will, it's on there to be done,
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
I have
Yep, okay, councillor Naya, just one question at a time would be great, thank you. And then councillor Vincent, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I couldn't be more clear, so I'm just restating. If you haven't heard, a lot of people have complained to me. One of them complained on NZ Day about a slip in Pahi, which is there for 6 years, have been reported. I would like to know why we are not doing it. And yesterday on Plunkett Street, I was called to show resealing done. And I have the video, which I'll send to everyone. And the person obviously doesn't want to come in the photograph. So there were issues there. The issues was the metal and even the liquid, whatever you bitumen, they were all everywhere. They were going in the culvert. There were chances of slipping. The people who were using the wheelchair it was on the pavement, not clear. The lady had worked for NZTA and she said, you're supposed to cover those boundaries of those culverts so that it doesn't go in there. So I saw it myself and she said there was no need to do it. We never asked for it. And the person who was doing it said, well, it is in the list and obviously we get paid when we do it. So what I'm trying to figure out, I'm not interested in how many slips were repaired because we don't know. If you done 12, there may be 20 there. I would like to know in reporting with respect to the chief, is that where we know what are the challenges, what is not being done. Nothing is being done on that side. The Victoria Street, I mentioned to you many times, you come with some excuse or other, and I live there on a daily basis. Why we are not doing it? The focus is not there. Mr. Chair, the focus is not there on the other side. That's my,
Sorry.
My question is why the focus is not there? Vincent, Pahi is your area.
Councillor Naya.
Yes.
So just two things. What I'd like you to do is just manage your tone with our staff because you're being very pointed at the moment. So just settle down a little bit if you don't mind, please.
Yeah, I was driving.
And secondly, you've raised two very specific points that you want answers on, and Dion isn't going to be able to answer them on the hop here today. So what I suggest you do is send an email that sets out those two locations and clearly with the question that you're trying to ask, so that Dion can go away and come back to you with some.
Well, I'm more interested in asking what are the challenges.
It's a very broad question you're asking, but I'm happy for the panel to attempt to answer that if they want.
Can I answer the Pahi one? Yeah, you go Pahi, then I'll go Victoria.
Sorry, boys, is it appropriate just to go cover off some of the slips that Dion touched on? The slips that Dion are doing under the maintenance contract, and there's the larger slips that we're doing through the overall program, which includes the ones Kurt and I have. So your Pahi one is under that larger program. Nick we've completed a registration of interest for contractors. NZTA had some concerns that the price of that Pahi 4036 job, the repair cost was not something we could put through the maintenance contract. We had to go and specifically obtain a tender. We've completed that process, so now we're getting pricing again. Although Downers had used the suppliers, NZTA were saying they wouldn't give subsidy, although they're advising. They didn't specifically say no, they just said we had to go through a better procurement process, which is why we've just completed that registration of interest. So I now have contractors available to do that slip. The one at 2.7, which is the smaller one, is already with Downers. They have a green light on that. We're just having to change the design, given some of the challenges we've found on a couple of other sites where the design we're using, we actually found a couple of problems with tracking. So 2.7 is underway.
What is 2.7, sorry?
On Pahi Road, 2.7 is the first slip, 4036 is the major one that has been there roughly 6 years. So KDC's roading team have agreed we will put that one through. It wasn't one of the phase 3 sites, but we're working on that anyway.
NZTA have agreed, the discussions with KDC and NZTA have agreed, we'll put that up. So that side is being handled. Thanks. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, just as regarding Victoria Street. So we've had the testing and the design done for Victoria Street, which we've got back. The design was when we've done the investigations, the Three Waters infrastructure underneath is rated as poor or worse. So that needs to be replaced before we go and do a full rehab over the top. No point in us going in there wasting $1 million to fix that site and then having to go back in and do it again when the water fails. So we have to make sure that we do it properly, right? So we're now, the design for that is also no fines concrete, which is significantly risky to dig out a big bathtub in the middle of winter and then try to fix the Three Waters infrastructure underneath it before we come back to do the pavement. So it will be done in next financial year.
It hasn't just been discovered, obviously, not in the last 6 months. You didn't know.
No.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Vincent and then Councillor Howard again, and we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the situation is that, you know, on your current record, you've done such a good job with getting down to closer home for me in my patch, it was quite a flurry of interest at the little village of Whakapira out to hear that the new slip was going to be dealt with before the end of the financial year. And I'm just seeking some clarification on that. In the discussion, and I couldn't find the YouTube record of the meeting to get the precise wording, but you indicated that at the same time there'd be some land acquired as part of the same repair job, which would have the effect of improving the visibility coming out of Te Road, but that's several hundred metres away.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I can answer that. So,
I've got a second question, but that's the question.
okay, probably timely, just jump into the slips overall. Whakapira 10K, which is the one, the very large
The
slip.
new one.
Yep. At the meeting, Jack Steed, Deanna's mentioned that they've spoken to the landowner has highlighted the slip is actually much larger. And hence we're changing that design. So we've got so many slips there that we can actually, it's not, we suddenly lose money. We're just pushing the resource to get the slips through that we can. So that one there is a redesign, but I'm asking WSP to focus on the ones that we can get done before 30 June. So redesign there, that's going to be a realignment. With the ROI document, I'd like to just ask Nick to hold that up for a sec. That's a little document that went out and it's complete. So we have on there, there are 9 slips that are basically going through that program, and we have 5 slips under the GETS program. Four sites, 5 slips. So there's 14 sites between those 2 documents that are there. Downers also have another 4 sites that they're currently pricing or underway. And on top of that is obviously Hotu Road 2700, etc. So the other 4 sites, there's 2 on Mangawai at the 2800 and 2880 mark. We're looking at smaller jobs. There is also a very large one, not quite the same as Kurt's, but similar complexity to what we did on Papara Oakley in terms of timber pole wall on the basin and building a reinforced source slope back up. The overall question that Nick keeps putting to me and Jason, are we on track to sort of be 8 mil? I'm still confident, yes, we're on track to go over 8. Nick still has kittens on this, but the way it would work, I was out on 2 sites yesterday. The contractor's learning curve on doing the delivery is just going up like that. So what was originally a 4-week job comes down the next site to go to. So this is what we're finding. They're able to punch these sites out much quicker and they know what we're after. And again, WSP, because we've got that collaboration, we're changing the designs to pick up the lessons from one and put on another. We've secured the poles. One of the suppliers has offered, even if they don't get the job, those poles are there, we will just reimburse them for the poles and put them on another job. So we're not having these lead times. This is what we mean. There's quite a fair bit of, the goal is to spend as much of that $15 million. The GETS process, it's given us an interesting outcome. A couple of the prices are actually significantly lower than what we expected. That's a bonus for council, but it can also be a burden. A chat with Nick yesterday is one of those sites, the price is what we think is artificially low, which generally means you spend a lot more time having to manage the site because the contractor physically just can't complete it. So there's a bit of a challenge there. And that then links into, there's been a discussion also, it hasn't come up today, but Cairns Road, we're using that ROI process to also get additional pricing on Cairns Road to change the gradient from 18 to 12% so that we can get that project out and get the earthworks complete through. So quick oversight from there.
Thank you. Did you have a second question?
I did.
Councillor Linton?
It relates to your report, and bearing in mind that it was, you know, for the month of March, we've had a lot of rain since, and I think that the focus was going to be on dealing with the potholes between the one-lane bridge and the state highway, but there's some quite significant ones that have developed along the rest of Ford Road as well. And I was wondering if in your updated report for April, it would include some reference to those ones also, not necessarily to the same extent, like it would be a patching job rather than a rebuilding job, but yeah, I just, I could have put in the service request, but.
No, thanks for raising it. We'll definitely action something, like, make sure something gets done.
Thank you.
Councillor Howard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dion, you mentioned just in passing about an increase in RFSs, is it, from in April?
Yes.
Without wanting to preempt your April report, are we finding that these responses from ratepayers are just alerting you to new issues or reoccurring issues with the rain, or something new?
So the increase in numbers all mainly relates to the rain, a lot of trees down, and then there were multiple RFSs for the same thing. So, you know, but we count them as time there is a logged request.
Yep. So
those just numbers, I think the numbers were just over 200.
Okay.
For April.
Probably not unexpected, but.
Yeah. And just keep in mind as well, with all the state holidays and obviously all the rain, we actually only had 11 work days in April.
Yeah, geez. Done well.
Brilliant. So we're going to move on now. Councillor Knight, we've got more questions. They
Just last.
mail. I've already said we were finishing with Councillor Howard.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate all the hard work that you're doing, and it really is showing out there. It's been a challenging month of weather, that's for sure. You've carried on, so great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, I have the
Thanks, Val.
Development Contribution Draft Policy. Catherine Overwater and Linda O'Reilly to present. Welcome, Catherine and Linda.
How are you, Ash? All right?
Chair, you got my apology for lateness. It was one of the trucks. So we're just going like 40, 50, all the way from, I should have taken a number plate. It was coming this way, Mama. Yeah.
Right, thanks, Catherine.
Good morning, elected members and Academia Larson. So I've got with me today Linda O'Reilly. So Linda is our council from Tompkins Wake, and she's here today just to help us along. If there's anything from a legal perspective that comes up, she's been helping in the background with the DC policy to make sure we're doing everything above board, and will obviously be involved as we move through the process. Online, we should also have my colleague Michael Webster, who's also been helping me with pulling the DC policy together, given all our things with district plan review going on at the moment. So today I'm just going to step you through basically the policy, which you should all have as attachment A, and obviously seeking direction on some of the final wording there. There is still time. We will be obviously working to present the final version to you at the 28th of May council meeting. And remember, that's still proposed, so it's still got to go through the public to get feedback. And then obviously we come back to you with public consultation feedback once we've done that, and hopefully for final adoption in about August, September. So we're still on track, which is good. So I'm just going to start talking you through. So we've obviously had the PEC session with elected members on the 4th of April. So there was some really good feedback on the discussions held there, which obviously related to the nuts and bolts and mechanics and obviously methodology. And remember, we've got our PEC session this afternoon, so there will be some omissions obviously in the policy at the moment with the tables, and we'll talk to you more about that later. But for now, we just want to focus on the text, what's in front of you. There are obviously a lot of moving parts to the DC policy, but we've tried to adopt the Whangarei policy where it's most appropriate for KDC, simplified things, which hopefully have been reflected there, particularly around the house unit equivalents, which are in there. You can see the draft at the moment, and obviously looking to make sure that we're doing a better job of effective recovery of infrastructure expenditure related to growth. There has been a lot of discussion around the timing of DCs, and I'll talk on that a little bit further in the slideshow. And staff obviously are wanting to make sure that we're practically making the policy work for us. But yeah, overall, I think the feedback that we gathered was really helpful to get to this point. And obviously today, you're seeing the policy in its work for the first time. So happy to take questions, and we've had a few already, which I'll address as we move through. I think I've pretty much covered that off. That was just the feedback from the thing. So one of the things that I do need some direction from elected members on today is there is a proposed clause in the Whangarei District Council policy, and if you recall, when I came in the PEC session, we talked about there were a couple of gaps missing from the policy, our current policy. And one of them was addressing the preamble to the Turi Whenua Māori Act. And some councils do include a provision exempting Papakainga developments from the development contributions policy. So what I've given you in the wording in the report is just a proposal for discussion, and would really appreciate some feedback as to whether you want that wording or whether you want some different wording, or whether you don't want it at all, so that we can be clear as to what would go in the policy. So through you, Chair, do you want to stop here and talk about that aspect of the policy?
If you'd like to, yeah. There's do you have any position on this, or are you just putting this forward as a suggestion that would be another policy?
Just putting forward the position which is in the paper that I've put to you. So you'll see the wording there, and it's up on the screen here as well. So I mean, it's up to you guys whether you support giving exemptions for Papakainga developments. And I know Councillor Howard, you had a question about reserve contributions in that space. So I don't know if you wanted to raise that with everybody and talk about whether that's something that we should include.
Well, it's here, and I'm probably getting myself confused between reserve contributions and DCs. Yeah, look, to me, the principle is that we'll come to the question, but the principle is that part of this is to get the infrastructure in place and paid for, and ultimately to have funds allocated to that specific area from where they come. And I think it's a long-term thing to also look at what the maintenance factor and things like that is, where you're asked, people are using roads, footpaths, and that's a particular area I talked about. We need to have some funds collected from those. This is not about individuals. This is about the developer paying, and I think that they should be applied. Simple as that.
Anybody else got any direction to give? Councillor Nair?
Thank you, Chair, Catherine. Thank you for this presentation. I mean, I'm not well conversant, and it's good that the model you're taking with Tonga is probably more trusted and more robust model. So maybe you can tell, basically, I would like to know in terms of direction is what are the significant changes which are affecting the development of the district are being made, considering adoption of that policy. What I would like to also know is the development contributions are essentially based on the growth, right? So we see very minor contributions sitting in Dagalil historically. And I don't think by private, that's my clarification to the chair as well, is based on my reading, just the mere fact that we have PCs done or 2 occasions means that we will start getting all those developments right away. It's not going to happen that way. So I would like to know on the policy front something whereby we can have, as Councillor Howard was pointing out, reserve contribution, not a negative balance, but a positive balance, which we can proudly use for developments there, because there is, so that will be good. Thank you.
Okay.
So are you able to respond to what's been said there at all, Catherine, or is it more of
I think it might be worth parking your comments, Councillor Nail, with respect to this afternoon's session when we talk about the actual numbers, which is obviously sensitive.
Okay.
I think that might be the better place to talk about. Yes, what I was hoping from this discussion was really whether we support, people that come to council and want to do a Papakainga development, and whether they should be exempt from the policy or not, or do some of the DCs apply, as you've indicated?
Well, yeah.
So we've heard from Councillor Howard, we've heard from Councillor Nair. I'm now going to go to Councillor Paniora.
Good morning, kia ora tātou. Through the chair, my indication or direction to the council is to be consistent with the other councils in the district. I think that it's very short-sighted to effectively place a development contribution on Papakainga, especially when development contributions over on the west, where most of the our marae are based, does not currently have development contributions. It's short-sighted because I thought that the need for us to enable the development of Papakainga was so that we could start getting some contributions to the rates for ture whenua Māori. And this is just going to be a prohibitor in the development. So on the one hand we're giving, and then on the other hand we're taking. So I think that we need to do it in terms of a staged approach. We've got a good proposal in our district plan to enable that development to occur, and then to start getting some consistent rates tax. Otherwise, as we're well aware, within the 6-year statute of limitations, all of the rates debts are written off. So I just don't understand why there's comments around the table that this is not about individuals. That comment is very much not in line with what Papakainga and marae development is about. It's about supporting and uplifting, manaking the hapu and whānau, and that could be in the hundreds. So these are sites. These are actually community sites as well. If you have a look at Ahikiwi as an example, that manakis and uplifts a lot of people, and as well as our rangatahi. So I would hope that the elected members would try to see it as more of a community than an individual good. And that's just my direction to keep it in there for now, and then we'll have the conversations in the kōrero, I suppose.
Provided that they have, that makes sense to me. I don't find that offensive at all. So I'm happy enough for us to carry on that basis with the words that are actually in the draft. Just one point, if I'll just grab another one at this stage, because there are some other things perhaps further on the discussion. Just in terms of, it just occurred to me looking at it, it's unusual to see, in effect, the definitions section before the introduction.
I think that's what whangarei has, so.
It could well be.
Yeah, we can rearrange that.
Well, it's not altering the sense of things, but it just, I mean, you've got the bit, how to read this policy, well, that's fair enough at the beginning. Then I would have thought, you know, then there's the introduction, and then following introduction would be the definition section, I would have thought. Perhaps it's a bit more like this, the form of a statute kind of feel.
Well, sometimes it's at the end.
And sometimes it's a glossary of terms.
Yeah. Happy to take your comments and put that into the new version if you like.
It might be something I could say I achieved as part of the my big moment. Yes.
Councillor Wilson Collins.
Thank you. Yeah, just on the Papakainga, Councillor Paniora raised the point that I was wanting to raise as well. So yeah, I'm in support of the wording and it going forward for the reasons that were stated. And I'd really like to see it included and then in what goes for public consultation.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Yeah, look, listening to what other people have said around the table about it, I think my concern would be if it was to impact on council services in a big way, then I think, you know, I think people should be paying into services that they'll be using. I know it says here that there is a low level of demand, but I'm just saying that, is it something that could be looked at the assessment stage if there is, you know, needs?
So through the chair, just to be clear, if we include the provision in here that Papakainga are exempt, then it would not be something that would be assessed as a special assessment later on, unless you wanted it to be worded as such. But I guess to give context, most Papakainga, you know, if we think about where our Māori freehold blocks of land are in the district, a lot of them are rural based. There's not that many urban based ones. And obviously, if you think about where marae are located, they are often on their own service anyway. So it's probably anticipated that a lot of the Papakainga developments that we will see, if we do, which I hope we do through the district plan, obviously being an incentive for them to not have barriers, is that they would probably be rural based anyway. So I think looking at it from the DC perspective, you'd be thinking about maybe roading and maybe a district-wide contribution, if anything, but they would not likely have the same impact as, say, setting up in the middle of a township, where maybe they do impact wastewater and water supply, for example. So hopefully that answers your question, gives you some perspective on, you know, we've seen only the Ahi Kiwi project so far, and I'm really hopeful that in the future there'll be more, but it's not going to be hundreds of applications. If it did become a problem, you could review that in 3 years' time, for example. Yeah.
So thanks, Catherine. Just sort of come back to that point about the Councillor Williams has raised there. We're probably primarily looking at roading impacts in terms of additional dwellings and the effects of that. What is the difference between the impacts of multiple dwellings on multiple owner land versus the impacts of multiple dwellings on land? Is there any difference?
Do you mean in terms of like physical impact, like the demand on the roading impact?
Well, our engineering standards, I think, 6 vehicle movements per day per dwelling.
Yep.
And so if you have additional dwellings on multiple owner land,
yep,
is there any difference to that having additional dwellings on freehold title land?
I would say it's probably exactly the same. And so what we'd be saying here, just to be clear, is that if we were talking about Papakainga on whenua Māori land versus freehold title, for example, would be exempting one but not the other.
And so would it be a point of equity to exempt the other? So if people have multiple dwellings on rural freehold title land, that they would also then be exempt?
Well, that's not what I'm proposing at the moment.
And why are you not proposing that?
Well, because we're talking about meeting the preamble of the Te Ture Whenua Land Act. So if council wanted an exemption for those things, that's certainly part of this conversation for the policy. But the reason for that is obviously to promote and encourage Papakainga development to happen on Māori freehold land. So that's the I suppose the carrot with this proposition here, as opposed to and to give context to the other example that on general freehold title would be minor dwellings. We're going to be permitting those, and also in rural areas you'll be allowed to do more than one dwelling, etc. So there'll be multiple dwellings on other properties, but what we're saying here is that they won't be exempt. So
They will be paying.
they would be paying a DC as appropriate for that catchment.
Yep.
So it is a big, this is why it needs to come in front of you for a decision.
And we're talking 12,500 for some of those.
Potentially.
Currently, for roading alone, I mean, my position would be it's for everybody or nobody. So if everyone should be treated the same way, one or the other. Yep, Councillor Howard, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think thank you, Catherine. That has clarified it. My specific point on this was exactly what the Chair has just said. Everybody, and particularly as I'm looking at the roading and the footpaths, critical that if they're put in, but over time, there comes the maintenance issue. And, there is some funding at least in place that is allocated to that area. I just think that makes sense. We're trying to preserve something for the council for the cost. We've had any number of situations where over the years, these things haven't been collected and we're always having to go out of rates to pay for things. I think it's a future-proofing.
So we've got 7 minutes left on this item. Yep. Councillor Paniora, have you got another question or a comment that you wanted to make there?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to quickly, just because I've seen that Councillor Howard had spoken twice, so I just thought I would jump in there and just correct some of the kōrero around the maintenance that's required for marae. I'm not too sure whether that was a suggestion that there's maintenance around the marae or within the marae. Firstly, maintenance within the marae is there's funding pools available for that. That doesn't need to be paid from the ratepayers. And the second thing is that most of the marae, if not all of them, they're in rural zones. So there are no footpaths, there are no street lights. There are no services, including, and most of the time, water or wastewater. So I'm unsure what the council would even be charging rates to the marae for, let alone development contributions. And my final point is that my understanding of development contributions really are for developers that are fly in the night, come in, build their whatever infrastructure it might be, businesses, sell to whoever the consumer is or the client is, take their profit and go. Now, marae are here to stay, have been here before, and no, not everyone should be treated equally when it comes to obligations under Te Tiriti o Waitangi, specifically to Article 2, and that's the reason for provisions such as that, because I suppose unfortunately for some around the table, that is a reality of the constitutional framework and arrangements of this country, whether you like it or not.
Thanks, councillor Paniora. So we've got 4 minutes left to whiz through the presentation. So we won't take any more questions until Catherine has completed this.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, if I could just leap in here. We are asking for direction. I'm not convinced we've got that direction.
I think it should go to the community. I think it should be included to the community and their feedback.
I just don't think we have enough direction on this point, whether or not to include this in the policy or not. So
It's going up for consultation.
it will go up for consultation. So are you comfortable then for us to include it in on that basis?
Well, I think the direction
Yes.
is mixed, and so that you need to go out and consider on the basis and ask the community whether they do or don't want the options.
And provide specific clarity as points that have been raised here already by Catherine on what's exempt, what isn't.
What I'm hearing is, so we'll put it in there. However, we ask specifically the community that question.
We're asking them the question, do you want option A or option B?
We do have to provide a draft policy as well. So it's not, we ask the question for sure.
Well, but with respect, Mr. Chief Executive, the feedback that you've had here is not all on the same point. So you can either try and make a decision here in this briefing today that it's going one way or another, or you need to bring it to a council meeting and vote on it, because we have had feedback on both sides of the debate.
We could present it through you, Chair, sorry. We could put the options forward for you to consider at the 28th of May meeting, and then you could provide that direction, which would feed into the draft going up for consultation. Maybe that's a solution.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Just,
Well, it's either that or we have a draft that encompasses options.
yes, yeah, just remembering it.
Can I ask, or I'm not giving clear direction either. Can I ask to request when you come to the meeting, some clarification on the fact if we include it, what is the economic effect is going to be, including this or exempting this? What we are talking about in terms of some sums effect? If we go into Marai and we see we're going to charge it, how much money we are talking about? If it is minuscule, maybe it's not useful discussion. Yeah, that'll be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we'll provide the options for decision at the council meeting on this one, and then incorporate your feedback, that decision into the final policies for consultation.
Okay. Do you have more points that you would want him to speak to today, Catherine?
I did just want to see if there was any other feedback on the draft, and I just mentioned that obviously internally we're just trying to make the policy work from a practical perspective, in terms of timing of when DCs apply, and also the payment options, etc. We haven't quite ironed that out yet, so I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, yeah, well, what we might do is we've got two hands up here, so we'll take some feedback now, and then anything else can come back by email. Can we have a time frame by which when you would need that?
Need to get that onto the agenda pretty quickly, but if we said sometime next week, would that be appropriate?
Before the end of next week, is that what you're saying?
Friday, yep.
Yeah, before Friday week, okay. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had some questions on number 11, the assessment area, which is page 13 in the policy.
Yep.
It's got 11.3. Says for clarity, should council not require development contributions on the first consent? So when would that? So why would we not necessarily do that on the first consent for a DC?
Yeah, I think I'd probably have to come back to you on that one, because generally when there's a consent in, we assess you know, for the first application. So, Linda, if you've got any additional.
I just wanted to check out the wording there because it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point raised.
Yeah. And sometimes it can be just about timing, about when different stages of a development have come through for consenting. So you might have a subdivision consent, you might have a land use consent, you might have a building consent. And at different stages, it's actually possible in some cases that the assessments will change. For example, if you have a subdivision consent, you don't necessarily know how many building units will be on it. In terms of a subdivision for commercial development, for instance, you don't know at all. Because you base the development contribution on floor area mostly, or hard stand area, or some other aspect of the building. So it's just really a timing issue. Ideally, there is an assessment done on the first consent application, but you have to allow yourself some flexibility to catch up with what might have happened over a period of time as the site's developed.
And at 11.2, it says assessments will generally be made at the time of the earliest application for consent. So is that again just allowing some leeway, or does it need to be generally, or?
Yeah, it's the same.
Yeah, it was just to understand that, because it seemed a bit.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, it's actually it's astounding how many times that there does need to be some further assessment for some reason or other. And it's not necessarily easy to come up with good examples, but believe me, it happens all the time.
Yeah, I was just thinking of multi-unit developments. So sometimes developers will put in like a land use consent to do multi-unit development, and then they'll come along and do a subdivision after. So it could be a unit title or a freehold subdivision. So then you've got those two different consents, one to just build it, and then the second one to do subdivision. So I guess that's what this is trying to cater for, is that flexibility between the two applications.
Yeah, that's right. It was just for that clarity. And sorry, just a third question. I did send it through previously.
Oh, yes, I did capture that. Yes, I didn't get to mention that, but I have noted that. And I guess, I can include some wording to the effect that it comes, you were suggesting the ward councillors, that was to do with the development or agreement come to council in clause, I did highlight it, but I didn't flag it.
0.2.
That's right. Yes.
And
so I've just got council elected members, but I think your point that it comes, there's some say from the ward councillor, that is your point.
Yeah, and I think it's event as well, that when a development agreement is presented to council, I think if we're all on the same page, it might be a better process than it coming to councillors who might have had thoughts or other involvement, and it might not be quite what.
So just to be clear, are you suggesting it comes to the ward councillors first as a full council?
No, what I'm saying is, if there is going to be a development agreement, I think it would be beneficial to have the ward councillors, wherever the plan changes, councillors could perhaps be involved. I'm just asking the question.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Look, I'll play with the wording, and then you can have a look at it, and we can include it in the final for the 28th. And if that,
and obviously other councillors will have
views. Yes,
yeah. Too. So I was just putting that out there.
Yes,
thank you.
Okay, thank you, councillor Lynn. Sorry, go ahead, Linda.
If I may, I had some comment about that, and just wondering if council was going to put some delegations in place in terms of those development agreements. So that's another thing to think about, whether there's a process that involves delegating, for instance, to a group that's, maybe the ward councillor and an officer of council or something like that. So there's possibility of sort of not necessarily having all of those development contribution agreements come to the full council. On the other hand, you may want them all to come to the full council. So it's just an issue that I had noted.
So currently, if I can jump in, Mr Chair, so we bring development agreements to the full council for agreement as well. So it's an interesting concept, and so I'm not speaking against it. Whether or not it needs to be included in a policy is quite it's quite prescriptive as well. And then, obviously the elected member could lead that at the council meeting for the decision making side of it, but it could also put the elected member under significant pressure too, as well. So I just want to make that point as well.
Okay, councillor Vincent, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, thanks. It's interesting because I was wanting to speak to that very point. My first thought was be careful what you wish for, because there is the opportunity for the appearance of corruption through cozy deals being done behind closed doors. I think the key issue is that it needs to come to full council, whatever happens before then, but the full deal needs to be exposed to the full light of day through a council meeting. And that's, I think, something that needs to. That wasn't really a question, but thanks for providing us feedback.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll get the timeline there. That's all clear. Are you going to wrap up, please, Jason? Anything further to add?
I have nothing further to add. Just making sure that, Catherine, you've got enough direction and Linda to move forward to the next step. Obviously, we're going to take your feedback and we've adjusted the options around Papakainga. We'll bring that for a specific decision, then we'll include it in the final policy. Just to note, we do have to do quite a bit of work in the background on this. We'll talk about that in PEX as well as far as the Capital Works program. So there is a significant amount of work to go to get this to you. So I just want to make that point before we conclude today, Mr Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Catherine and Linda. We'll have a break now until 10:50. Thank you. Okay, thank you and welcome back. Next up, we have the project delivery update with Kim, Brian Hagan and Hayley Withington. Thank you, Hayley and Brian.
Good morning.
Come online.
Kim's online just here. So I'll just introduce the item. This is our regular monthly update, and we've made a couple of changes, improved changes to the report based on your feedback from last month. And I'll just hand over to Kim to take you through those high level points in the report. Take it away, Kim. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. Through the chair, good morning elected members, and thank you, Hayley, for the introduction. So yeah, April Project Capital Delivery Summary Report. Where we're at, 18 out of 19 projects have been fully delivered and 16 of those were delivered within available budgets. I think most notable progress is that 25 projects are now in the execution phase, which is what we want to see, up from 14 in March. We reported in March that we had two vacancies in our project manager space, and we've now transitioned 30 projects that they were running to external project managers. So that was a significant challenge and a big piece of work. But with the improvements that we have put in place in the project management office and the effort that the project delivery team put in to procure those additional resources, we're back on track. It has, however, impacted 10 of those 30 projects, and you'll see that in the statistics. In the written report, we've kept the March figures so you can see the progress between March and April. Essentially, we are on track for 57% of the program we're responsible for delivering this financial year. The other 38% we've scheduled to be delivered in this calendar year. So I think that's really important to note. Typically in previous years, there's been a lot of carryover projects and we're trying to clear that backlog. But this year we're in a lot better position because all of those projects that are in flight, they're actually past the initiation stage and they're either in planning or heading to tender and execution. Just a quick update on the delivery risks. So staff retention and capacity remains a program delivery risk. It's ongoing, but we have filled a significant vacancy, which is the operations manager in the infrastructure space, which has responsibility for a large part of the program. And in terms of the projects currently at risk, probably one that we need to highlight is the Mangawhai Alamar Crescent car park upgrade. I'll possibly hand over to Brian to talk to you about the specifics of that. Brian, are you able to give elected members an update there?
Sure, through the chair. Thank you, Kim. Yeah, so on Friday we found out they'd discovered middens on the site. So the site was basically halted. They went through the discovery procedure, so notified Heritage New Zealand. So we're now in a process of working through the requirements there. There's going to be a need for an archaeological investigation on the site that will add cost to the project, so we'll need to look at additional funding. The estimation at this time is potentially $50,000 just for the archaeological investigation work. Potentially. And then obviously there'll be additional costs in relationship to the contractors' extended time frame and potentially additional work with them, working with the Heritage New Zealand team. There'll also be some additional costs for PM and etc. project costs. So we will also be incurred those additional costs. So yet to be fully determined, but we'll keep you posted on that one.
Thanks, Brian. You will see on the screen in front of you, at your request, we've added the budget by location for you on the front page of the summary report. So that's now been included. And if we just go to the next slide, Hayley. So you've seen this one before, but what will have changed is the projects by stage, as we noted, more in the execution phase, which is really positive. And next slide, please. Open spaces and facilities, we're at 32% of the program. Most of the projects are on track or partially, or will be partially delivered, and we've got a significant number delivered in this activity. Just one to carry over, which is the Mangawhai New Civic Building preliminary works. And next slide, Hayley.
Next one.
Yep. Wastewater, there's the activity there, and you can see the pipeline. I don't think there's anything additional to report. And then we can probably just flip through each activity. I don't think there's anything to note. I think, yeah, I'm happy to take questions from elected members.
Councillor Williams.
I have a question.
Yeah, it's really great to see some of these projects coming in under budget. My question is, what happens when you come in under budget and there's money there that hasn't been used? What then happens with those unallocated funds? Does it go into the pool for other projects, or how does that work?
Yep, so through the chair, if it's a stormwater project, we can allocate those savings to other stormwater projects, so within the buckets that we've had. Otherwise, just at the end of the year, I think finance will reconcile all the unders and overs at that high level where they can within those funding allocations. So if they're like for like things, and they just get managed unders and overs at the end of the year. But we try to find savings wherever we can.
Fantastic. And just a further question. I think when I gave my feedback, I had asked for the projects to say, where they were funded from. So I see under the report, it's got the external funding next to the projects. I just wondered, I had asked for it to go further and say whether it was DCs or.
Yep.
Rates, just to, so I was just thinking, if it doesn't have anything beside it, does it mean it's rates funded, or are you working on breaking that out further?
Yeah, no, that's correct. Through the chair, we're still working on getting all that information broken down project by project, and so you'll see this report continuously improve. Finance are rolling out a new financial budgeting system at the moment, and so we are just still working with them. So externally funded, we've got that picture straight away, and then the next steps to get them broken out by funding types that will keep coming month on month.
Right, thank you, Hayley.
Councillor Nair.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have a few questions. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Eddie. I'm delighted that now we have a clear picture. My question is related to two things. One, how can we claim a lot of projects, like I can say here, which are saying partially delivered with a zero balance spent? And in the same tone, while we are saying out of 90 projects, 4 have seen completion, 30 are in the planning stage. And the one in the planning stage, if I look at quite a few in our side, with a zero money spent. And I would like to know how long they are sitting in the planning stage, a couple of years maybe.
So through the chair, there's actually 18 projects that have completed. They're going through a closure process at the moment, but 14 that have been fully completed. So that's 18 total that have been finished up. Closure just means that there might be some paperwork, like as-built to be delivered, or a defect process that they need to go through, but the project delivery team have essentially finished that project. Some of the projects that you'll see might have zero budget against them, or zero actuals against them, that are like district-wide playground renewals, or something like that. Those district-wide, they're reactive budgets. So there's a plan to spend those. They might not be have any money spent against them because they're just going around and auditing playgrounds, and then they will go and fix those. So there's a plan to spend that money in that budget, but there has been no actual spent against it because that work hasn't been completed this financial year. So those district-wide ones specifically are operation teams that have a capital budget, and they will reactively spend it as and when they need it.
Through the chair, I would just add to that a lot of that planning, Councillor Nair, is done by our teams. therefore there's no actual cost. Some planning we need to get externals or consultants for, but where we can, we deliver that planning, and it's a significant part of the project to getting it up and out of the initiation stage, fully planning it, scoping it, putting some budget around it, to then be able to hand it over to delivery and start executing it. So that's also why you'll see zero balances, but that progression is significant. Typically, we've had carryover projects that, you know, they came to us this year with zero planning. They were still at the concept stage. So we would say they're not even partially delivered. But a lot of work has been done to get all of the projects off the ground, bar 3 for the year, which is a real difference to previous years, to ensure that we can deliver them at least this calendar year, and really reduce that carryover balance, which is a key target for us.
Thank you.
Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one query on the Mangawhai Gum Diggers track and the new path and the jetty. I was under the understanding that this is a project by Alvarium, who own residential part of Mangawhai Central. Surely we would just have an overview of their plans.
Yep, so through the chair, the Gum Diggers track clearing is part of the MCL consent, so they're clearing that track. The jetty and the boardwalk will be connecting to that track. So we have been working with Alvarium to deliver that project for us. So like we would contract out to an external contractor to deliver our project. We're doing the same thing. So we won't be in their way. They will be delivering that project on it.
They will be delivering,
so it still sits in our project list here. So it's like we would get data to deliver our project, still sits in our project list, and still is delivered.
They pay for
still our asset, but they will deliver it. Well, we will be paying for that, and we'll be owning the asset. We've got money in our long-term plan, but it could be that instead of us paying outright for the assets, we reduce the
contribution. Okay, well, that's your, yep.
Yeah, that's still in negotiation to how that will work out.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent, Councillor Nair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just note that we've got listed within wastewater and water, $50,000 allowed for SCADA updates. Is that a total of $100,000, or is it counting the same $50,000 twice?
I'd say it would be a total of $100,000, and our SCADA is our electronic monitoring of our water systems, and so it'll be upgrades that are happening across the year, but that's within the ops team, so I'm not totally clear on what the scope of those.
Through the chair, they are 2 separate projects, each totaling 50,000, and SCADA updates for each different activity. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Nair, one final question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just clarification. Now we see these water renewals at Logan Street. We have $1.1 million. It's in planning for a long time, I guess, but more to do with Dagaville water reticulation, Mangatroto dock. These things you say funded by DIABOF, and what does that mean? This funding is available forever?
No, so through the chair, you'll recall that we had a better off funding package that we allocated to the Dargaville and Mangawhai community hubs. Central government came to us and told us that they would like us to reallocate that to waters projects, which we've done. So DIABOF is, I've like zoomed in with my fingers, who knew? The DIA Better Off Fund is exactly that. It needs to be spent by 2027. But you'll see that those like Doctors Hill, Mangatroto wastewater treatment plants, those projects are well and truly progressing and will be completed. So we'll have spent that money well before 2027. Reticulation renewals, so those ones are just renewals, pipe renewals, smaller type projects that are is much easier to deliver than main pipelines that you'll see that we're doing in Mangatroto.
Sorry, the water reticulation, which is in Dagaville renewals, zero spent, $100,000. I think I've been seeing it for last 2 years.
There'll be there will be a reticulation renewals line every year that goes in here, but we've subsidised KPC money with Better Off funding money instead. So it's the same again, those are operational budgets, they're reactive. So if there needs to be a renewal of a reticulation line, we need to have a budget to be able to reactively pay for that.
Excuse me, Harry, Kim's got something to contribute there as well.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to be clear for Councillor Nair and elected members where we've indicated in that funding line, because it was a previous request, I think the Mayor wanted to know which projects were receiving external subsidy. So it's not necessarily fully subsidised, and as Haley mentioned, we'll work on improving the report to be able to show you splits. So there's a portion of that that is funded by the Better Off Fund. And in terms of the renewals lines, we do scope and plan those each year for the priority renewals that need to be completed. So for that particular line, we're in the planning stage, we've done the initial scoping, and the planning is underway to actually deliver those renewals.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
So, Councillor Howard, if I could find one final question.
Thank you, and short one. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have on the last page, I think it is, district-wide council vehicle renewals, which we've underspent by 110,000 so far. Do we not lease vehicles?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, we don't. It's actually cheaper to purchase and sell on, because we do get a very good rate through the government contract in the initial purchase stage.
Yep.
And we get quite significant maintenance savings through that.
Yeah.
So we use that, and it's more cost effective to do that and sell on at the end of life, for our perspective, than it is to.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Right, wonderful. Thank you, Kim, Haley and Brian.
Okay.
That update. Next up, we have the reserve contributions use of policy. Thank you, Sue Davidson, you have the floor.
Council.
Morning, Sue.
Okay, so this is a reasonably small policy, but it's and it's scheduled to be reviewed as it is, as most policies are, every 3 years. It seems to have worked well in terms of the areas that we're spending on. And council, the whole reserves contributions policy contains two parts that probably need to be reviewed, and that is the percentage that is taken from each part of the catchment of the district and put into a district-wide. And you'll recall that 3 years ago, we reduced that from 20% to 10%, and also the part looking at the reserve contribution grants that we give out on an annual basis. And so most of this policy was basically hasn't changed much since the commissioners. So because there hasn't been any need for, apart from the percentages. But what I'm going to show you, just to give you some background, what I've been able to pull out from section 224s is just to show you where the growth is. So you can see in the first column, Kaiwaka Mangawhai, that it's, and I wasn't able to pull out the Kaiwaka codes that was done per district. This is how Dina has her statistics, but you can see that the lots have gone up from 143 total the first year, 182, 173, 188, 157, and year to date we're about 124. Look like we'll probably need about 160 new lots. And then it shows you where that's falling. So in the Kaiwaka Mangawhai area, there's been quite consistent growth, and it's always been around the between 35 to 50% over the last few years. For the Mangawhai wastewater system itself, that's actually reduced a bit more. Most people just recently have been building outside the wastewater scheme area, but within Mangawhai. And Otamatea, you can see that's been growing as well, from 10%, it's quite consistent. And Dargaville and West Coast, Dargaville hasn't been growing at all, but we expect it to increase because of the plan changes that have gone through. And you can see the rest of the Wairoa area that's been growing quite a lot. So that's where basically the contributions are coming in those sort of areas. So the, as I said, the last time it was reviewed, February 22, I haven't proposed any significant policy changes, but just wanted discussion on the percentages to come from, if you want to continue that and keep it at the 10% or reduce it, and also the grants. So sometimes we manage to give out the whole of the 250. Other times I think the year before last, we could only give out about 140,000. So there aren't always groups there. And they've got to meet the criteria to a certain extent. This is the only council that I've worked for that's done that. Councils don't normally give out reserve contributions as grants. They prefer to keep them to the catchment areas. So I'll get some feedback on you, but I'll just go for the last slide that I've got that basically gives you some idea as to what's in the balances, likely balance at the end of June, negative 300,000 for Dargaville. And just because there's not a significant amount of development going in Wairoa. Mangataroto, there's still quite a large balance there. Kaiwaka, that's reduced, but there's a lot of growth, so it builds up. Mangawhai, 646,000, and I know that council has taken out some money since we did the calculations for Weka Street, and we've got to be cognizant that there'll be the surf club we've added on, I think 800,000, but there'll be the contributions are still quite steady coming into the Mangawhai, and district reserve funds has still got a balance of 1.4 million. And we're utilising that typically on the grants or on parks in different areas, parks, car parking and playgrounds, I think, predominantly how we're using that. So my questions are about the percentage for reserve contributions. Do you want to hold at the same level? Do you, and I don't know what council's thinking was in the past, or do you want to reduce it?
Thanks, Sue. I have quite a strong opinion on this, and I don't know whether it's shared by everybody, but I think that growth needs to pay for growth.
Yeah.
And I think in a situation sometimes where we can't have growth paying for growth and also paying for non-growth, that doesn't mean that in low or no growth areas we don't still look after our communities, but we take that from a different budget line, which is typically general rate. And I think that we're kind of at a turning point right now, particularly for Dargaville, where we're anticipating a lot of residential sections being created there. And if you do some basic maths on it, those lots are worth around $300,000 to $350,000. Say 300, charging reserve contributions at 5%, you're going to get 15,000 coming in per lot. So if we end up with 300 new lots, about $4.5 million, which sounds like a lot of money. But if you have a look at the map in the reserve contributions policy, you've got an enormous area in the Dargaville and surrounds catchment to use that money in, and lots of parks and reserves. And so I think we kind of need to make sure that we spend every cent of that money in that Dargaville and surrounds area, because we're going to need it. As far as the contestability thing is concerned, I'll take responsibility for that. It was my idea. And the idea there was that the feedback we were getting from the community was that council was just going and arbitrarily doing projects that people didn't necessarily want and no one was having any say in it. So the idea of that was, in fact, that the community got to put up those ideas in a contestable way against the projects put up by the staff, and the elected members would decide what they wanted to be done. But that didn't ever end up happening. The staff projects continued and the community projects came in. The intention was always that those were to be done in catchments, and it still shows in the remnant wording of the policy that if there are sufficient funds available in a catchment area, that you would then have a bound. But probably for simplicity and from a staff perspective, it just got lumped into one general district-wide round, regardless of where the funds had come from. And I actually think that we have a very different situation now. I think we have much better communication between elected members, staff and community. And I think that there is a huge amount of bureaucracy around administering that contestable arrangement, and there are problems with implementation in our parks as well, with health and safety and budgets and all those sorts of things. So I would prefer to see it if we actually actively engage with the community about what they want to see in our parks and reserves, and that can be done through submissions through the long-term plan and the annual plan. I think that the elected members should approve all expenditure of reserve contributions funds through decisions of council. And I also think that the elected members should approve the projects that allows us to keep that conduit with the community, that local knowledge to land where we land with it. So I think it can be a lot more simple than what we've currently got, and I think that would be a good thing. Those are my thoughts. Thank you. Councillor Wilson Collins.
By contestable funding, you're talking about the grants.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
I also feel very strongly about this, in complete opposition of the view that's just been given. Speaking about the 10% first, understandable, and there is going to be some development in Dargaville, but there's no guarantee on how fast that's going to happen. All those lots will sell for by the time they come up for sale. And so I think just because there's one instance of a good amount of growth in one area of the district, I don't feel that that's a reason to take away the district-wide 10%. We don't look after our smaller districts out of the general rates, because we then have debates about how the general rates should fund a certain area of the district. So I think that that district-wide 10% serves a good purpose in our complicated district, where we have communities of extreme differences. The grants themselves, I'm also in favour of keeping, because the community can actually provide better value than the council can for the same amount of money. So when those grants are applied for by community groups, we're empowering the community, number one, to take ownership of their parks and reserves, but they're also able to actually deliver something better than council could if council having to pay contractors to do the same job. So that's my thoughts on the two things. I think they should actually say where they like.
Thank you, Councillor Howard, and then Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I put in a couple of points on this, and I think that the council is to be applauded for the way that they have worked and addressed issues of budget thus far, anyway, on parks, to keep that maintenance and keep a better focus on it. Yeah, always room for improvement, but that's good. As I recall, I don't think that there are an overwhelming number of applications in the grants, just specifically for parks and reserves and things like that. They are projects in the community that wouldn't otherwise be funded or otherwise get funding from us. So I agree, it is, I do think, and I've said there that we should keep that. And, you know, maybe we have to relook at the whole basis of, or the basis of application. Relaxed about that, but I'm keen to ensure that some of our groups, good community groups, can justify and have the avenue to get a grant, to get a project going, which I think really ultimately is, you know, it comes back to the benefit in the community. That's good. As for what we do with the district-wide fund, I'm pleased that it was reduced from 20% to 10%. I think that I would keep it, but maybe there is room for a reduction in that. And I only think that that might help us if we find that there is demand to increase the 250,000 slightly. We don't want to just have it money, you know, to be taken, but I think with the review of criteria, that might work.
So, and just to comment on that, I think that's a good idea to review the criteria, because sometimes we might be stretching where we're putting the money.
Yep.
Like we did put reserve contributions into the Poto Wharf for growth, and we've really got to consider can that be done for growth? And there was a number of others.
All right, Councillor Vincent.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, firstly, we're talking about capital works, which involves either the creation, enhancement, or renewal of, so we say, recreational assets that are in, if not public ownership, with access for the public. I think that long held before this discretionary fund existed was that the money should be spent in the area where it's collected from. And there's one exception to that, I think, is where there's something of district being created. So it should remain for that reason. I think that the criteria for considering the other discretionary application should be that it needs to be. I really like the idea, as Councillor Erin Wilson-Collins has said, to quote the mayor, that you can get potentially better bang for your buck by involving a community group and its enthusiasm and the use of volunteers. And I guess being able to realise some vision. I do think, though, that any project that's approved needs to fit with the council's plans. Should we have a reserve management plan for a particular land that's going to be involved with a ground application? And also that the money spent should be on the area from which it's collected. So, so that brings you back to the Darwin minus $313,000. I think that we should have a district-wide fund taken from the general rate, cover those areas that don't have the opportunity to draw on that for the sake, which might be enhancement or renewal of existing assets or creation of new assets of benefit to the population at large. I think that is, I think it's kind of fits with what our Henry said, but it's, I think that covers off what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent. Councillor Nair.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I want to say a few words on this. Obviously, I'm more interested in policy and practice, so they should go hand in hand. And if we look at the numbers, obviously, Dargaville negative obviously stands. And as my fellow councillors did mention, I can see Mangawhai 2.4 surplus and 3 million committed, more committed than they had the surplus. And estimation, I have no idea on what basis, but then which means we are overspending than what we have in our bucket. On the other hand, Dargaville, if you remember, there was 200,000 for Selborne Park committed a few years ago. Not a cent has been spent. So there's no point having a policy if we are not putting it into practice. Coming to Councillor Vincent's point, district-wide, there is a district-wide reserve fund with 1.3 million sitting in there. Maybe there's an opportunity for the councillors to transfer some money to Dargaville so that it is positive and actually spend that money, not just sitting there. Yeah. So this is my 10% coming to that part, reducing it or uplifting it. I mean, as I said, policy and practice, it doesn't matter what figure you put in. The point is whether you spent it. The Manga 5.1 was not even in the policy. I think it's spent before it came in the kitty. So 10% is a reasonable amount of contribution, I would say. There's no point to bring it down because then again, we are struggling for general rights to do a little toilet in a park or whatever. So these are my thoughts on it. I think usage should be uniform throughout the district. It should not be based on, whims and fantasies of certain people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nair. Councillor Williams.
The Chair. Yeah, I concur with what Councillor Vincent has said, and also Deputy Mayor Larson. I think when I look back to the past of where it was 60-40, 80-20, 90-10, Mangawhai still has a lot of things that they need to do. We have a sports park that we need to bring up and, to get that for the community to use. We don't have sports fields. We've for a growing area, we need to use our contributions here. There will be in every catchment, they've got their own balances there, and that will start to happen for Dargaville, but they just haven't had the growth to have these funds. So I think 100% should be in each catchment, to be honest, and then there are other mechanisms to fund through the general rate for Dargaville. We do, have other grant. We have the community grant. We have the MILA that is there available for the community. So
not for the community. For the Mangawhai community, MILA.
Yeah, but the community grants, that's everybody.
Yes, but you mentioned MILA as well.
Yeah, I'm just saying what the other grants are that are there. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I think sometimes we get drawn into a proportionality argument where it's actually a matter of money being levied for a specific purpose. I think that's where Councillor Vincent's RMA background probably comes through as a good strength.
If you would indulge me just a moment, just to further clarify that, I think it could be said that if the money didn't need to be spent within the catchment of the Wind Fund, then how can we justify taking it?
Well, that might be another very good point, but the policy also actually says that the money will generally be used in the area where it's collected unless it's not needed, which is the converse of that. Then it might be used elsewhere, but that's another very good point. The thing is that under the RMA, we are collecting these funds specifically to acquire new reserves and to upgrade the facilities in existing reserves to compensate for the effects of growth in that area. And so when you go to the landowner who does a subdivision and say, give us $15,000 or $25,000, and now we will spend it 100 kilometres away, it probably grates them a little bit, I think, because it was specifically levied for that purpose. So I think we need to bear that in mind. It isn't just a slush fund. I think that the point that Councillor makes is quite right, that rather than just saying we have other mechanisms to look after our low growth or no growth areas, let's make sure that we actually do look after them by allocating specific budget out of general rate so that we then can have them go, yes, the money's there, and these are the things that the community wants to have happen in those areas, and we can then run our lens over them and make things happen in that regard.
Sorry, just a clarification, the chair. So, one of the councillors suggested that Dargaville should have general rates funded. So are you saying that to take reserve, because there's negative, we want to put general rates on whole of Kaipara to make it happen, is it? Just a clarification.
What I said, well, there are 2 points here. One is that in low growth areas, that we should actually allocate specific budget from general rate for those low growth areas to have facilities upgraded. But the other point about Dargaville is that although there hasn't historically been a lot of growth there, it is in train with 2 private plan changes proposing quite a lot of residential development, and one of them is progressing rapidly now. So we're lucky to see some significant revenue come in there as well.
So is it possible to take it from the district-wide reserve?
Well, the district-wide reserve obviously is not just come from out of thin air, has it?
So I can answer that. No, we can't just pay off the Dargaville debt, the monies that they've used for out of contributions, which have obviously got ahead. Some project is more, or they've spent more in that area from the financial contributions. We have to wait for the financial contributions to catch up, which they will do. So that will sort itself out. I can't take money from others to pay off a debt.
So what is district-wide reserve fund for?
Well, that was created by council maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And what they looked at was probably playgrounds in the district. From what I can recall, we've used it on car parks, we've used it on playgrounds.
Yeah, so why not going to Dargaville? That's what I'm asking. Why do you have another general rate from general rate?
The general rate isn't to pay off the deficit.
No, I'm talking.
I think we've traversed that. You've had an answer from Sue on that one now, Ash. So if there's anyone's got any further feedback on this, we'll get it back in by email. Don't mind. What's the deadline for that?
So can I just, I've got to take away from this what you want me to do. So you want me to tighten the criteria for areas of growth if we have a grants, maybe reduce the grants because we've got enough, certainly got enough of coming out of the district. They come out of the district-wide growth. Maybe reduce the amount of growth. And I think people are saying they don't want any further amounts or lessening the amount of either going to reducing from 10% to 5%, because I don't want to be in the position where you all write to me because you've all got different opinions. You want me to tighten the criteria. You want me to have all of the, you want to keep the grants, but maybe reduce them.
No, it didn't. Sorry,
So I think what we've got is that we don't have a consensus of direction here at all. And as Councillor Wilson Collins said, she disagreed completely with what I had said. So we can't tell you collectively to do one thing. We might have to have options. All I'm saying is that if there is any further feedback, it can come in. We're going to have to consolidate that somehow and land somewhere through a decision of council. Do you want to speak to that at all, Mr. Maris?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thanks. Yeah, it is getting difficult when there are opposing views, actually. So effectively, what we're going to have to do is likewise the previous discussion. Where you disagree, you're going to have to make a decision on that. And then we'd have to put that into the decision paper as an option, and then you decide. The thing is that we don't have the final version. You just then have to delegate to the mayor and the CEO or whatever to finalise the policy based on decisions that you've made at the meeting, and then put that out for consultation.
So this policy doesn't go out
for consultation, just to agree.
No.
Sorry, my bad.
Okay, so I can, and there's no timeline on this, so I can bring it back and go to council and some sort of decisions, but not the final policy, and then bring the final policy once you've made the decisions.
Thanks. Sounds good. Yes, thanks very much, Sue.
No reduced.
Yeah, you guys will just, council, you just have to make the decision, then we'll come.
Okay, thanks. So next up, we have the community assistance policy review. Thank you, Dean Brady. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm presenting today the Community Assistance Policy for review. The objective of this policy is for staff to be able to make recommendations regarding funding, contestable funding, and also licence to occupy and contractor services. As you've taken, the report has been read. The key changes that staff have made, I've highlighted there, was the visions and outcomes were outdated, so brought them in line with the current LTP. And also at this stage removed the paragraph regarding the Northern Wairoa Memorial Hall, as it's not operational, and it's been causing some confusion with community people wanting to apply for being able to use it. So I'm not saying that it's gone completely. We've taken it out of the current review, and it can always be put back in with your guidance. We've also just changed the delegation from mayor to CE in terms of any letters of support, purely because it's more difficult for when we do get requests to get the mayor to be able to do that in a timely manner, and just for ease for everybody really. So I'm seeking feedback today on the changes that have been made, and if you also have any further changes that you'd like us to make prior to bringing it back to you for adoption.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Does anyone have any comments to make on this? Councillor Nair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick one. So this policy is fine. But what I'm saying is how we actually implement it, because in terms of marketing it, we put it on Antino maybe, right? When you say that community grants are open, because I have got a few complaints that they were not aware of it in Dargaville. Obviously, they are not having phones, and in fact, going by the road yesterday, they said we were not told of the road closures, and I saw it was on Antino. So I think quite a few people are very, and quite a few organizations are not so updated. So maybe there is room in the policy or practice whereby people are aware of the applications open rather than just in, one place.
Okay, so through the chair, currently when any grants are open, we advertise them through all our media channels, and also the community engagement advisors advise people directly, different organisations that we work with. It definitely is on Antino as well. So, and we usually push that out each week. Whilst they're open, we kind of have a drive to push to make sure that organisations are aware. As staff too, we also monitor, and we're aware of organisations that usually apply. So we'll often give them a heads up, hey, we haven't seen anything come through, you're not attending this year. So keeping it rolling the whole time that we've got to.
That's very good. Can we look at encouraging the new organizations who are not on your list to somehow find out about it?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
And one further point, if I could, Mr. Chair, apologies. There is a role for you as elected members here too. We use our channels. You have your own networks within your communities. That's what you are representing. So you too can spend and share that message out to the organisations.
It's a very good point, Mr. Morris, and I would like open an email go to every councillor as well that this has started opening, so we can do that. We're not gonna we actually don't know what's happening in your space.
Okay, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to address Ash's points that he's made. It's a really good thing if you follow the Kaipara District Council Facebook page, because that's where all of that's posted, and then I share it on my personal Facebook councillor page for our communities in Kaiwaka, Mangawhai.
Yep.
So you can do the same in your area.
So all the councillors should use Facebook. Yeah, but the mayor doesn't have one.
Okay.
I'm just saying to you how you can share it.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any feedback they'd like to share? No? Okay, thank you very much, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny.
So I just put it to you, council, that we have at this point got a break scheduled. The only item that we have left has got a time allocated of half an hour. Are you interested in pushing on it now being 11:40? Yeah. Half an hour and then break? or-
It's in a couple of minutes to go to break.
Yeah.
Briefing.
Do that.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yep, okay, so we'll conclude our council briefing now. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we'll just have